Okay, last time, we're right at the end of the big section one, the 220 page section one of Treatise on Cosmic Fire that deals with the third aspect. So last time we continued with the final division of this section entitled The Law of Economy, where we learned that 5 was the number associated with the previous solar system, 7, the number of this solar system, and 9 with the next and final solar system, thus making a total of 21, the number of the combined manifested life of the solar logos, which by coincidence or not, is a number associated with the central panel of the Mensa Isiaka, which we've been studying in Secret Teachings of All Ages, and which also has as its theme, the sum total of logoic manifestation. We then learned that the 9 sounds, these numbers are associated with the sounds of each solar system and the mastery of these sounds. So we learned about the 9 sounds that will characterize the final incarnation of the solar logos, and that they will produce spiritual synthesis and dissociation of the spirit from the form. Humanity will, at that distant time, have achieved a comprehensive understanding of the law of economy, and through perfected hearing, which is a sense associated with mastery of the physical plane, will represent all creative activity during the entire life of the solar system. Then we're told the knower will utter the 21 words in his own true key, thus blending his own sound with the entire volume of vibrations, and thereby achieving sudden realization of his essential identity with those who utter the words. This will have a threefold effect. When the perfected adept of that distant future time utters the 5 Brahmic words, he or she will, quote, see all forms as illusions and will be freed, knowing himself as omnipresent. This represents master of the law of economy. When the adept utters the 7 words associated with Vishnu, he or she will know him or herself as omniscient. This represents mastery of the law of attraction. And finally, when the perfected adept utters the 9 Shivic words, he will realize him or herself as pure spirit, and on the consummation of the chord will be merged in the self, the capital S self, the source from which he or she came. This represents mastery of the law of synthesis. So this sort of culminated this section on sound. Okay, we then took a brief look at the 4 subsidiary laws of the law of economy, which together regulate the activity of all sentient life in the lower quaternary. These are the law of vibration, the law of adaptation, the law of repulsion, and the law of friction. DK sums up these 4 laws by saying, A, an atom vibrates to a certain measure. That's connected with the law of vibration, of course. B, it rotates at a certain speed. That's the law of adaptation. D, it adds its quota to the general heat of the atomic system, whatever that may be. And that's the law of friction. Wait a minute here. think I skipped one. C, it acts and reacts upon its environing atoms. That's the law of repulsion. We're then told in the last paragraph, very last paragraph of this section that, quote, initiates have to master the law of economy before they can achieve liberation. They have to learn to manipulate matter and to work with energy or force in matter under this law. They have to utilize matter and energy in order to achieve the liberation of spirit and to bring to fruition the purpose of the Logos in the evolutionary process. So the whole thrust of this is that in order to move on from the cosmic physical plane, along with the Logos, because remember, we are monads within cells in the body of that great being, and at this future time we will resonate consciously with that being. So, but in order to move beyond the cosmic physical plane, we have to, through sound, through the sounding of these 21 sounds, master that plane and be able to master all aspects of matter in order to be released. And that pretty much takes us up to where we left off last time. When we turn the page, we come to section 2, entitled Solar Fire, the Fire of Mind, which at 1,007 pages forms the bulk of a treatise on cosmic fire. This section is made up of 6 divisions. After the introductory questions, we have division A, manas or mind and its nature. B, manas as a cosmic, systemic, and human factor. C, the egoic ray and solar fire. D, thought elementals and fire elementals. E, motion on the plane of mind. And F, the law of attraction. The scope of these 6 divisions is truly stupendous. If any of you have taken a look at this book before these webinar series, you'll know that this forms really the heart of the teachings of ToCF. In this section, the term fire of mind refers to solar fire originating from the cosmic mental plane, which finds its microcosmic expression on what humanity calls the systemic higher mental plane. This is not the energy of lower mind, which follows the law of economy and the fire of friction, but that of higher mind and the law of attraction. This higher aspect of mind is directly aligned with the law of attraction as opposed to lower mind. Okay. But before we get into Division A, DK poses a series of introductory questions. So if we could, he's going to be handling these in depth, so I'll be very brief in my handling of them initially, just to begin to familiarize ourselves with them. So if we could get a reader, please, to start us off.
And Veronica, you want to read?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Introductory questions. What is the relation of the sun to the sun? What is evolution and how does it proceed? Why is the solar system evolving along the lines of duality? What is consciousness and what is its place in the scheme? Is there a direct analogy between a system, a planet, man, and an atom? What is the mind aspect? Who are the Manasaputras? 7. Why is the progress of evolution cyclic? 8. Why is knowledge both exoteric and esoteric? 9. What is the relation between A, the 10 schemes, the 7 sacred planets, the 7 chains in a scheme, the 7 globes in a chain, the 7 rounds of a chain, the 7 root races and sub-races?
Thank you, Aunt Veronica. So, since TK will be exploring each of these questions in depth, starting in just a couple of pages, let's continue. Another reader, please.
Barbara, you want to read?
Yes. Before taking up the subject of the fire of mind under the schedule already outlined, it might be of profit if certain facts are here pointed out and 1 or 2 points clarified. The subject we are undertaking to elucidate is one of the profound mystery, and it is the basis of all that is now seen and known, both objectively and subjectively. We have somewhat studied that pole of manifestation called matter. The subject we are now entering upon concerns several things which might be considered in general terms as consciousness, and in specified terms as including the following subjects, hence its fundamental importance. A, the science of objectivity. B, the manifestation of the sun through the sun and its attendant spheres, or the solar system in its entirety. C, the evolutionary development of consciousness in time and space, therefore the evolution of spirit and matter.
Thank you, Barbara. So first, before taking up the subject of the fire of mind under the schedule already outlined, it might be a profit if certain facts are here pointed out and one or two points clarified. The subject we are undertaking to elucidate is one of profound mystery and is the basis of all that is now seen and known, both objectively and subjectively. This is another way of saying that mind is responsible for all appearance on the cosmic physical plane, which plane includes areas of the divine life which man, the microcosm, usually considers deeply subjective, yet the cosmic physical plane is, from the perspective of the solar logos, objective. It manifests through the form aspect. The other reason that it is the basis of all that is now seen and known is because we are looking at the second great aspect, which is that of the sun. And just as the spirit remains unknown and unseen, though felt by means of the form, also the mother aspect, the pure source of matter, also doesn't manifest purely in and of itself. It is always in combination with spirit and a spirit infusing. Matter is all spirit infused. So that's the other reason that this second aspect is the basis of all that is now seen and known. Next, we have somewhat studied that pole of manifestation called matter. So DK here refers to the first 220-page section of Treatise on Cosmic Fire, which focuses on the third aspect of matter, which we just are now finishing. Opposite to the pole of matter is the pole of spirit. Poles derive their very nature from magnetic relationship. They are not independent or disconnected centers of force. Next. The subject we are now entering upon concerns several things which might be considered in general terms as consciousness. Consciousness comes about through a juxtaposition of spirit and matter, which for disciples at, broadly speaking, our stage of growth is the influence of soul on the personality aspect. Some words, phrases, and concepts which describe or relate to consciousness are the sense of touch, which includes being, quote unquote, in touch, knowingness, awareness, sentiency, relating, the intermediary factor, blending, and love. All these apply to this term consciousness, which is a word given to describe the soul aspect or the second aspect of divinity. Next. By the I invite you to jump in at any point, ask any questions. If you're a little fuzzy on the facts or if you have a comment, they are always welcome. So next up, and in specified terms as including the following subjects, hence its fundamental importance. A, the science of objectivity, which is the method by which the subjective becomes objective. In occultism, objectivity is understood to operate on three distinct levels. From the cosmic viewpoint, all forms existing below the upper three subplanes of the cosmic mental plane are deemed objective. All planes below this midway point of the cosmic mental plane. With the seven subplanes of the cosmic physical plane furnishing the substance for both the etheric and dense physical cosmic forms. From the human standpoint, the lower 18 subplanes, shown in both these charts, of the cosmic physical plane constitute the material foundation for the mental, astral, and physical sheaths. And finally, the dense physical plane is seen as objective in comparison to the astral and mental planes. So this is all an attempt to describe the relative aspect of objectivity. From our perspective, we tend to think of objective as literally tangible, physical, visible, touchable, right? Which really is just the lowest two subplanes of the dense physical, right? So you have these progressive levels of what are called objectivity. Okay, next. B, the manifestation of the sun, S-O-N, through the sun, S-U-N, and its attendant spheres, or the solar system in its entirety. Okay, so the sun, S-O-N, is a being of subjective essence. It's an identity, whereas the S-U-N sun serves as the manifest vehicle through which that essence expresses itself. S-O-N sonship bridges the gap between the third or matter aspect and the first or spirit aspect. The attendant spheres are the sacred and non-sacred planets, which, though they have their own individual ray makeup, are all expressive of the solar logoic second ray. Yes, James.
Hi, I'm using earbuds. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Do these terms have anything to do with emotional, unemotional, the way we use subjective as somebody who's being very personal and emotional about something?
Yeah, it's another way of Yeah, and you can also use the term for the nature of thought forms, right? Objective thought forms, subjective thought forms. Um, it's really a movable feast, this line between the subjective and the objective. Strictly metaphysically, occultly speaking, it is at its ultimate level, it's the dividing line lands between spirit and matter. You know, that's the great poles. But there are myriads of polar opposites representing subjective and objectivity within that uh, great polar pair. Okay. Finally, C, the evolutionary development of consciousness in time and space, therefore the evolution of spirit and matter. First of all, it is not matter or spirit that evolve per se, but rather the consciousness of the indwelling jiva that develops through habitation of a progressive series of spirit-infused forms. Spirit may appear to evolve in conjunction with its expressions, but its core remains unchanged. For spirit is unconditioned and complete in and of itself. The whole concept of evolution is, you could say, has nothing to do with the parameters of spirit. You could say the concept of evolution is the movement towards pure spirit within the entity, a given level of consciousness, who's inhabiting a given level of consciousness, right? So evolution is inherently a second aspect word. Matter also appears to evolve because of the increased vibration of the forms made up of progressively higher levels of matter that the indwelling jiva progressively inhabits. But in and of itself, on its outside of its connection to form building, matter evolves. It does evolve, but at an extremely slow rate, gradually acquiring the elevated qualities of the solar systemic life by which it is conditioned. DK tells us that in the next solar system, that matter itself will carry in it the essence of love. It's an extraordinary thing to imagine. Okay, next up, a reader, please.
James, you want to read?
Yeah, and I got a comment. When I was a little kid, I remember thinking, why doesn't everything around me have love in it? So
There you
that's
go. There you go.
yeah, that's
That's
very nice. Very
pretty advanced thinking for a little kid. Yeah.
no,
Well, when you reincarnate in the next solar system,
yeah,
you'll
it'll
be
be
there.
satisfying. Okay. If the above three fundamentals are studied, it will be noted that they are very comprehensive, and therefore, from the immensity of the theme, it will not be possible to do more than attempt to bring a general clarity of conception as to the broad outline of the process and as to the gradual development of consciousness. For the sake of an intelligent following of this matter, it might be wise first to lay down a number of propositions which, even if already known and appreciated, will serve students as a scaffolding on which to erect the intended structure of knowledge. If a student of the wisdom can grasp the nature of the general theme, he can then more easily and accurately fit the detailed information into its appropriate niche. Perhaps the best plan would be to formulate certain questions and then proceed to answer them. The answers to embody, therefore, the propositions that will be laid down.
Thanks, James. So, an introductory paragraph for this whole section. First, if the above three fundamentals are studied, it will be noted that they are very comprehensive, and therefore, from the immensity of the theme, it will not be possible to do more than attempt to bring a general clarity of conception as to the broad outline of the process and as to the gradual development of consciousness. So these three foundational tenets are indeed all-encompassing, as they embrace both the involutionary and evolutionary phases of manifestation, along with the unfolding of consciousness that occurs during these stages. The rest of this page, the rest of this passage outlines DK's intended approach to the complex material that follows, which is to present a series of propositions that illuminate the central theme, thus providing a framework by which further details can more easily be understood. But let's continue. Next up, reader, please.
Joe. Want to read?
Yep. These questions arise naturally to the student of the secret doctrine when he has reached the point where the big plan is becoming visible to him. But the pile of detailed material to be built in remains as yet inchoate. The questions we might ask and study are the following. What is the relationship of the sun to the sun? 2, what is evolution and how does it proceed? 3, why is this solar system evolving along the lines of duality? 4, what is consciousness and what is its place in the present scheme of things? 5, is there a direct analogy between the development of the following factors: a solar system, a planet, a man, and an atom?
Okay, first, these questions arise naturally to the student of the secret doctrine when he has reached the point where the big plan is becoming visible to him. But the pile of detailed material to be built in remains as yet inchoate. So these questions seem to reference both the three tenets just presented, as well as the 9 questions that follow on this and the next page. Reference to the secret doctrine may include both that treatise by HPV and as well as the body of knowledge referred to as the ageless wisdom teachings. Blavatsky herself would often talk about the secret doctrine being that great body of occult knowledge, and not not referencing the book that she was writing, that this quote comes from. The pile of detailed material, such an unlikely noun, right, suggests that we will have to gradually make sense of and give structure to an enormous amount of detailed material. Piles suggests a kind of initial state of disorganization. Next, the questions we might ask and study are the following. What is the relationship of this SON sun to the SUN sun? So, starting on the next page, DK will be giving in-depth answers to each of these questions, like a few pages on for each. So for now, I'll just make a kind of thumbnail observation, 1 or 2 observations on each of these questions just to get some cohesive sense of why he chose these 9 questions. And if any of you have any comments or thoughts about these, just let me know. Okay, first, what is the relation of the SON sun to the SUN sun? As stated before, the SON sun is a being of subjective essence, whereas the SUN sun serves as the manifest vehicle through which that essence expresses itself, one aspect of that manifested vehicle. Sonship bridges the gap between the third or matter aspect and the first or spirit aspect. The SUN sun, and by extension our solar system, are expressions of the second ray and the second aspect, born of the Father's will to be and the Mother's creative power to manifest that will into form. And we'll get into a much deeper dive into this question once we go through these 9. Next, what is evolution and how does it proceed? There are a couple of ways to define evolution. The first is to see it as the second phase of the triple unfoldment of any cycle based in time and space, with the 3 phases being involution, evolution, and pralaya. Another way to define evolution is as a descriptor of the unfoldment of all 3 phases. Note, for example, that in this chart that the descent of the first life wave, which is definitely an involutional phase, is here called the evolution of matter. So from a certain perspective, the entire process can be seen as evolution. For human beings, we tend to break it into the involutional and evolutional stages, the development of the form aspect, followed by the development of the personality's response to the soul. Next, 3. Why is the solar system evolving along the lines of duality? This relates to Gemini's second ray influence upon our solar system, which establishes the paradigm of spirit and matter, a dynamic that within the human kingdom first manifests as soul and personality and later as spirit and soul. It's through this duality that the path of evolution unfolds. It's just the briefest comments on each of these questions. For what is consciousness and what is its place in the present scheme of things? So by scheme, DK may mean the plan that governs our solar system. The fact that he says scheme of things suggests a more general terminology rather than the scheme meaning, for instance, our Earth scheme, or even this solar logoic scheme. We could see a unifying theme emerging as each of these questions lead to a deeper exploration of the second aspect of divinity, which is the subject of this entire 1,000+ page section. So in answer to the question, what is consciousness and what is its place in the scheme of things? Consciousness is that unique quality of the second aspect of divinity, whose development in the human kingdom is made possible by the spark of mind implanted by an overshadowing solar angel, the Manasaputras, and whose growth, consciousness's growth, depends on increased contact with the soul aspect. The level of one's consciousness is characterized by that with which one relates and identifies. Thus, consciousness is a kind of informed and conditioned awareness of self that allows for an interplay of the true self with the not self. Thoughts or questions? Okay. Okay. Yes, Barbara, go ahead.
Um, yeah, so I think that that as evolution brings us closer to spirit realization and activation, that it is bringing a full range of qualities with it that um, and that it and these qualities seem to be deeper and deeper into matter than we originally realized. That that even at the mineral level, that there's a kind of cooperation, and the Heart Math Institute is indicating the heart qualities in trees that will actually sacrifice for the young. um, so I think that that we're both in the situation that that the evolutionary forces are truly here, but we just haven't yet sensed them in a full way. Um,
Yeah.
So I think it's all evolution, and
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah. Thank you, Barbara. It's fascinating comment about heart math. I know for a while I did that monitoring system so that you can get your you can gain some control of your autonomous functions. You know, it was quite fascinating. But yeah, this idea that, you know, a tree acts in a sacrificial way is, I think, really found throughout nature. I think part of that is that certainly in the plant kingdom, but also in the animal kingdom, that the sense of separated individuality is not really a conscious principle. There's the sense, you know, survival brings forth the sense of the individual self, but not in terms of a separated entity so much, and therefore such things as you described. You know, it doesn't surprise me that they have discovered that. And yes, I agree. I think we're on the cusp of finding out more of those, you know, what you'd almost call second aspect consciousness qualities connected with the lesser kingdoms in nature. You know, we find out more and more all the time about the animal kingdom in that way. I remember being blown away the first time I saw a photo of an elephant painting a picture with its trunk. You know, an actual, you could probably Google it and pull it up. This was before, you know, you would question whether it was real as a result of AI. You know, maybe 10 years ago, this came out, and showing a level of brain activity that was, you know, far beyond what up to that time we thought what was going on. And of course, there's thousands of stories that, you know, indicate these higher qualities in the animal kingdom as well. Ariane.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I just don't understand why it's exclusive to the second ray. I mean,
What
isn't
is
the consciousness is equated with the second ray? Is that what you said, or am I misunderstanding? Because it would seem to me like to use the second ray aspect, right?
second aspect?
Oh, the second aspect, meaning
The,
the hierarchy?
the soul aspect, the inward aspect that is developed by the fact that spirit is embedded in form, and the interrelation between spirit and form creates this second aspect called consciousness. In other words, the response apparatus comes alive, stimulated by the spirit that is, you could say, that spark within the form. It's the second ray is love, wisdom, and consciousness is not unique to the second ray. All 7 rays represent aspects of consciousness.
Mm. Yeah, so could you, I'm so sorry to have to ask for you to clarify that then. So the second aspect is related to the soul or consciousness, and the first aspect is will, or can you just go over the different aspects, please, so I don't conflate the two?
Absolutely. First of all, no apologies necessary ever. First aspect is associated with spirit, with the will, with the completely unmanifest. The second we just talked about, actually it's best to go from first to third first. And the third aspect is associated with matter, with active intelligence. So it does have an association with the third ray in that way. But it also, in its purest form, is unmanifest. It's only in connection with spirit, because all sentient beings are a combination of spirit and matter, that the second aspect is created, which, as DK says earlier, represent everything that we can know and see in the universe is really a demonstration of the second aspect, which is spirit working within matter and creating consciousness. Does that help?
It does, and then I was looking at it, and initiation, human and solar, and equated the Holy Ghost with matter and mother. Could you just, I'm so sorry, but I don't understand why this whole solar system is a material one and has duality. Why, when the other planets actually don't seem to have any material expression, but maybe the etheric level is already considered to be matter, and they're expressing themselves at that level. Could you just quickly, I know I don't want to derail your thought process, but clarify how the Holy Ghost and the third aspect and matter and mother are related, and then why these maybe are unfair questions to you. They're so big. And then why is this whole solar system material if we're the only planet that really has a material aspect per se?
Where you're talking about the kingdoms of nature, the other planets have a mineral kingdom and, obviously extant, and they are in their humanities, obviously, are etheric in nature, which is still considered to be physical as you described. And why that's true is just, this is where we happen to be in the cyclic demonstration of this particular solar system. It's actually quite rare for a planet, for a scheme to demonstrate through its densest planet within its densest chain on its densest round. It takes those three lined up in such a way in order to create the manifestation that we see on Earth. You know, in the next globe, the densest substance will be watery, not water as we know it, but watery as we move back towards the less dense. And the previous globe was also in that stage. So, you know, without going into a deep study of that, I'll just say that we represent a very rare instance of dense physicality. Even though the visible planets also are in this stage in terms of their planets, their human kingdoms, human, animal, and plant kingdoms are in stages that are non-physical at this time. And of course, almost no details are given about the kingdoms of nature on the other planets. In terms of, let's see, what you asked about the Holy Ghost, the Great Mother, and the matter aspect. So in the beginning, you have the shining sea of substance that is impressed on by the spirit aspect, and Fohat, which is electrical energy, binds the two in the myriads of sentient forms. If you're interested, you can go all the way back to the beginning of the Secret Doctrine series and watch, say, the first 10 of those. It deals with this in detail. This idea of the initial coming together of the mother aspect, which only initially, only in the very beginning, was not connected with the spirit aspect. As soon as spirit impressed upon the mother, then all that was became, as DK says, all that is and can be seen and touched then became the second aspect, meaning spirit imprisoned in matter through the myriads of little sentient beings, little and big, sentient beings that make up our universe. Okay, Joe.
Well, another perspective on the same subject. I loved it when James even mentioned it and started us all on it. I'm thinking in terms of synthesis and working down, I guess, from there. DK very much emphasizes that, we're expecting an avatar of synthesis. We can ask ourselves, what synthesis are they thinking about? And then I looked at it from the standpoint of, first you have a man, and the man has to learn to think. And then to act upon that thinking. And eventually we get the Buddha, who is talking to us yet about thinking in higher realms. Then only 2,000 years ago, the Christ and love. And it seems to me in the last century, a couple of them actually, that more and more we are looking at synthesis in terms of matter and spirit. Obviously, the gender is involved very much. And personally, I certainly worked with the whole gender issue for much of a lifetime. Let's see, I think I almost got it all there.
Okay.
That I do believe in terms of love, and I'm so happy we're talking about this at this very beginning, because now our thinking will be colored about the synthesis and the love and the intellect coming together in whatever fashion that turns out to be. But I thought when James said that he wondered where love was, my thought was, life was difficult for me unless I were with the animals and the creation around me. And I think that when any entity gives love, there is a relationship that in some subtle fashion begins to come back, and that relationship was being established, even if we didn't know it, way early in life.
Mm. Okay, I'll only comment on your avatar synthesis comment. I appreciate your sharings. Thank you, Joe. It's just synthesis is always synthesis of spirit and matter, and it affects what it affects everyone at the level that they are. So so it will be with the avatar of synthesis, that energy of synthesis will be present for humanity, especially disciples. Well, I'll divide humanity into two parts. That the law of synthesis would affect unevolved man in helping them to gain an integrated personality, because it's the same in energy of synthesizing, of integrating, that is at whatever level. So for what DK calls unevolved man, personality aspect, working to synthesize the three she's, or integrate the mental, astral, and physical she's, that would be the effect of this great avatar. For those aspirants who have already gained this synthesis, then the next stage would be gaining further awareness of the soul and leading towards soul infusement. For a tiny few, that same avatar would the energy of synthesis would help in closing the gap between monad and that being who represents his soul infused personality, right? But I would think that in terms of the returning one, right, that it would be to further the process of integration and of soul infusement, which is, different than an avatar of love, who, love was a presented attribute that was brought by the Christ that we're only just barely beginning to understand in terms of its true nature. DK says in Raised Initiations on the section on technique of fusion that there's perhaps 1 million people on the planet. Of course, this was in 1930 something, that didn't know what he's talking about, know what the Christ was talking about when he gave the doctrine of love, or when he presented this attribute of love. Most of us, the word is used all the time, but the true conception behind it is a much more deep relational quality, having mostly to do with bringing the soul aspect to bear in one's relationship with others, and has nothing to do with sentiment. Okay, anybody else? Great, appreciate it. Okay, fifth, we're in the middle of the questions now. Is there a direct analogy between the development of the following factors: solar system, a planet, a man, and an atom? So much of DK's writings describe these direct analogies, pointing out, for instance, that a system, a planet, a man, and an atom are all expressive of the duality of spirit and matter, that all emanate a form of prana, and that when seen etherically, all form one stupendous interconnected network. It is to the interconnectedness of these factors that the term "as above, so below" applies. Next, Next up, questions 6 through 9. Could we get a reader, please?
Janet, you want to read?
What is the mind aspect, and why is the monastic or mental principle of such importance? Who are the Masaputras, or the sons of mind? Why is the progress of evolution cyclic? Why, as yet, do we consider certain knowledge as esoteric and other aspects of knowledge as exoteric? What is the relationship between the 10 planetary schemes, the 7 sacred planets, the 7 globes in a chain, the 7 rounds in a globe, the 7 root races, and the sub races?
Thank you, Janet. I know we're doing some repetition here, but it's actually, in the long run, it's helpful to become familiar through repetition of these questions. Okay, so first 6. What is the mind aspect, and why is the monastic or mental principle of such importance? Who are the Manasaputras, or the sons of mind? Technically, the mind aspect associated with the highest of the rubric or form-bearing planes can be defined as that particular effect of fohad on matter that allows for the production of thought. Intelligent activity is the highest function of the third aspect of divinity. For a human being on the path of return, the source of mind is only gained through construction of the antakarana between the mental unit and the monastic permanent atoms, in each case the epitome of lower and of higher mind. Manas is particularly important in this 5th Aryan root race, whose purpose is the development of lower mind during earlier sub-races, and of higher mind during the 6th and 7th. I see here that I didn't answer the question. Who are the Manasaputras? It's the original Sanskrit for what we call solar angels, who are these great beings on their own planes, whose are the source of mind. The energy of mind is in their nature, and at individualization, they overshadowed humanity and implanted the spark of mind. Next, why is the progress of evolution cyclic? Cyclic evolution is a result of active matter and what DK calls the molding spirit. I love that term, the molding spirit. So, combination of active matter and molding spirit. It uses repetition in time and space, cyclic, to evolve the consciousness of the indweller who inhabits a progressively more refined series of forms. Okay, just a taste of what DK will move into when he takes these questions on one by one. 8. Why, as yet, do we consider certain knowledge as esoteric and other aspects of knowledge as exoteric? It's very much like the subjective objective conversation we were having, right? In fact, you could say that they're very similar. We often use these terms to describe form and spirit, right? Esoteric spirit, exoteric form, or personality and soul, or more generally, an inner or outer perspective on a given subject. More specifically, we might say that which is considered esoteric concerns itself with the source of energy, and that which is exoteric concerns itself with that which is impacted by these energies, these source energies. And if you look at it that way, then it becomes a movable feast. You could look at, the esoteric and exoteric lives of, constellations of stars, or all the way down to, a human being. Finally, what is the relation between A, the 10 schemes, B, the 7 sacred planets, C, the 7 chains in a scheme, the 7 globes in a chain, the 7 rounds of a chain, the 7 root races and sub races? Okay. This is this giant rabbit hole that I very much avoided. Details of the relationships between each of these entities would literally, and does literally, fill volumes. What DK seems to here be underscoring with this question is the unifying principle of relation between, a second-rate dynamic that allows each septenary group, these are all septenary except for the 10 schemes, to act as a collective expression of a greater whole. Okay, I'll say that again. So this relation between is a second-rate dynamic that allows each of these septenary groups to act as a collective expression of the greater whole, and it's the greater whole that relates them. So you literally have this, for instance, the subraces are the septenary group that acts as the collective expression of the root races. The root races are the septenary group that acts as the collective expression of a globe. He's got these out of order. And then the 7 globes, et cetera, right? Each is a collective expression of the next greater level. And so there's a kind of Russian doll aspect to these, right? And it goes beyond this list, because you have, let's see, the 7 sacred planets are the collective expression of the solar logos, who is itself the collective one, part of a septenary group of solar logoi, who are the collective expression of this logos of the 7 solar systems, of which our solar logos is a part. There's no name given to that group. And it goes on up and up until you get to the one about whom not may be said. And frankly, almost infinitely, beyond that, as the James Webb telescope is revealing to us the literally, what do we have? What are we up to now? 300 billion galaxies, I think, have been discovered. 300 billion galaxies, they are certainly collective expressions of greater groups of beings. So it's the law, or the rule here is the interrelated dynamic between the septenary and the singularity, which itself is part of a septenary. Okay, it is this relational fabric woven throughout the solar system that allows, for instance, 7, I already said this. Yeah, okay. Next up, a reader, please. Any questions? Any thoughts about any of this? Okay, let's continue. Reader, please.
Yeah, Ariane, you had your hand up.
I think it was from.
Okay.
Yes, it was from before.
Thank you, Ariane. Go ahead.
So, Carol, did you want to read?
Sure, I came on late. I'll do it now. When we have endeavored to answer in brief and concise fashion these 9 questions, and have grasped through their replies something of the purpose lying behind the evolution of the consciousness of the sun, with all that is included in that expression, we shall be in a position to go more intelligently into a consideration of the plan, and to grasp more accurately the immediate stage ahead to be attained, working from our present standpoint as a basics. We must ever remember that a curious interest and a far-seeing grasp of the plan of the Logos is of no importance to a man unless he correlates the present with that which he believes to lie in the future, unless he ascertains the point achieved and realizes wherein consists the work immediately to be undertaken in this gradual process of attaining full consciousness.
Thank you. So DK here gives us a hint as to the purpose behind the coming exploration of the 9 questions just given, which is to better understand the quote evolution of the consciousness of this SON sun aspect, which will in turn lay the groundwork for understanding the capital P plan. I don't see any reason to go through this line by line. It's still introductory in its orientation. Let's continue. Excuse me a minute. Yeah. We must ever remember that a curious interest and a far-seeing grasp of the plan of the Logos is of no importance to a man unless he correlates the present with that which he believes to lie in the future, unless he ascertains the point achieved and realizes wherein consists the work immediately to be undertaken in this gradual process of attaining full consciousness. So here, DK, I did develop this, I'd forgotten. So DK emphasizes the importance of applying the insights gained from these teachers to the present in order to lay the foundations for a consciously directed future. Yeah, just studying this stuff out of time and space and not attempting to apply it is does little for in the service of humanity. Yes, Nadell.
Just getting sort of an introductory grasp of the globes and the rounds and the chains, and then realizing that we're just one root race beyond the 4th globe of the 4th round, that where we're headed, we can't even imagine what's out there. And it almost inevitably pulls you on, because it's as if, what are we going to be in the 5th, the 6th root race, the 7th? What about the next globe, the next round? I mean, where humanity is headed is so far beyond, and yet,
Yeah,
you can see how it does. There's got to be a plan to get there, and it's sort of say, okay, let's go.
yeah. Thanks, Nadell. Yeah, actually, even the next subrace of this 5th root race, we're in the 5th subrace of the 5th root race, and is the point of this time is to develop concrete mind to its fullest extent. There's always a numerical relation, so the 5th ray is very dominant at this point in the development of the mental nature, right? It's in the 6th subrace, the higher mind will begin to be much more common in expression. That will be the natural tendency. And that will lead the way to the 6th actual root race of this globe, where a higher mind will be the purpose of development, right? And as you say, that's the tiny little shift from one root race, even one subrace to the next, has profound effects on humanity, and we can't really see beyond even one subrace. We can make DK talks occasionally about these stages very briefly, and we can gain maybe some intellectual understanding, but any real sense of what humanity will have experienced by a given time is just impossible. Yes, Barbara.
Yes, this paragraph reminds me of Plotinus' view that it is something, the shining light of something beyond you that makes evolution possible, that magnetic pull is pulling you toward the future. And that for Plotinus, that shiny vision has to have also the magnetic quality of love with it. So loving what we are becoming in the future.
Mm. Yeah, I don't know if any of you have heard of Landmark or if you might have taken any of their courses, but I was taking one of their courses and the teacher said that humanity is divided into two groups. A tiny little group, well, the largest group by by far is those whose activities, thoughts, speech are built on what came before in their own lifetimes. But a tiny few pull the future towards them, which always struck me, that thought form, that they reach into the future and they pull that quality that they envision as being part of the future, pull it towards them, pull it into their daily life. Now, I always found that to be a very valuable teaching. Thank you, Barbara. Okay. Let's see here. So, next up, in the flow of the text, we move into the 9 introductory questions. But before we do that, TK has interposed chart 4, which appears right near the beginning of these questions, just like on page 225 is just the very beginning of where these questions start. Then this chart appears, which are, as all the material is somewhat interrelated, but this is in fact a quote from a chart and a quote, not as said here from Lucifer, May 1890. It does not appear in that magazine. I actually looked through the entire issue online, but does appear in volume 13 of Blavatsky's collected writings. And so, I thought now is as good a time as any to go ahead and take a deep dive into this material. It's absolutely fascinating, but it's not specifically related to these 9 questions. So we'll just set that aside for a moment and come back to it later. So could we, first of all, I'd like to read a bit of background on Valentinus, whose pleroma, it says here, chart of the pleroma according to Valentinus. So here's a little background on Valentinus, and then we'll get into the chart itself. Reader, please.
Kirsten, you want to read it?
Valentinus was a prominent Gnostic theologian and teacher in the 2nd century CE, known for developing one of the most sophisticated and influential systems of early Christian Gnosticisms. Born in Egypt, possibly Alexandria, he was well versed in Hellenistic philosophy, Christian scripture, and mystical traditions. He later moved to Rome, where he gained a significant following and nearly became bishop, according to some early sources. Valentinus is especially known for his cosmological vision of the pleroma, the fullness of divine emanations or eons that proceed from the unknowable source, Beatos, the deep. His chart of the pleroma outlines a complex hierarchy of spiritual beings arranged in how do I pronounce this?
Syzygies.
Syzygies. Thank you.
Yeah.
Male-female pairs, culminating in the creation of the material world through a fallen eon, Sophia. This cosmology was deeply symbolic, blending Platonic, Christian, and esoteric elements to explain the soul's descent into matter and its path back to divine unity. Valentinus' teachings inspired a major Gnostic school, the Valentinian tradition, which persisted for centuries and influenced later mystical and esoteric thought. His legacy survives through fragments preserved by early church fathers and through texts like the Gospel of Truth, possibly authored by him.
Thank you, Kirsten. Okay, so obviously a high initiate, yeah, and it's extraordinary that being so esoteric in his teachings that he almost made inroads to the level of being a bishop in the Catholic Church, which is really unimaginable. One wonders if there would have been a change in direction of the church. Yeah, so now let's take a look at the text beneath the chart, which appears, as I said, in the 13th volume of HPB's collected writings. So, could we get an intrepid reader for this text beneath the image?
Beauty.
Okay. First, the point, the monad. By thus, the deep, the unknown, the unknowable Father. Then the triangle, by thus, and the first emanated pair or duet, nose, mind, and its zygote, aletheia, truth. Then the square, the dual, duad, tractis, or quaternary, two males. The logos, word, and anthropos, man, two females. Their zygotes,
That's syzygies.
thank you.
Yeah.
Their sygesis, Zoe, life, and ecclesia, the church or assembly, 7 in all. The triangle, the potentiality of spirit. The square, the potentiality of matter. The vertical straight line, the potency of spirit. And the horizontal, the potency of matter. Next comes the pentagram, the pentad, the mysterious symbol of the Manasaputras, or sons of wisdom, which together with the sygesis make 10, or the decade. And last of all, the hexapha, or interlaced triangles. Hexapha, or interlaced triangles, the hexado, which with their syzygies make 12, or the duodeca. Such are the contents of the plethora, or completion. The ideas in the divine mind, 28 in all, for Bythus, or the Father, is not reckoned, as it is the root of all. The two small circles within the pleroma are the syzygies, Christus pneuma, Christ and the Holy Spirit. These are after emanations and as such, from one aspect, typify the descent of spirit to inform and evolve matter, which essentially proceeds from the same source, and from another, the descent or incarnation of the Kumaras, or the higher egos of humanity.
Wow,
Oh,
great work,
wow.
Katie.
Thank you.
A lot here. And we're just going to be getting at the very beginning of this, and this session will continue next time. So first we have the point, the monad, bythus or bethus, the deep, the unknown and unknowable Father. While the monadic point is typically placed in the center of the circle, in this illustration, it is placed at the apex of the uppermost triangle, here indicated by a red dot, where it represents emergence from the absolute. The here titled monad is not the human monad, but rather the absolute source of all manifestation. HPB calls it monas, M-O-N-A-S. Bethus means depth. Both monad and bethus signify utter unity and the unknowable root of all. It's pure unmanifested potential, and as such is the source of the first logos, the seed of all differentiation. In Valentinian ritual, the monad is invoked as the ground of all being, the hidden Father. Next, then the triangle, Bethus and the first emanated pair or duad, nous, mind, and its syzygy, aletheia, truth. So we have monad, represented by the upper point, which recedes as soon as there's any further manifestation. And the first duad, called in Gnosticism the first eonic pair. Eonic is meaning like eons, right? Which is the name of a great level of awareness or consciousness. You could almost call it a field of consciousness, represented by the two lower points of the triangle. Bethos, the upper point, actually coexists with its feminine consort, Sige or CJ, which means silence. And when he, quote unquote, deposits the seed of emanation in her, she brings forth nous, mind, and aletheia, which is receptive, truth-bearing energy. In Valentinus's cosmology, nous is the archetypal mind of God, the logos before incarnation. It is through nous that the rest of the eons are generated in ordered pairs, each reflecting aspects of the divine nature. Aletheia, the feminine aspect of this first syzygy, syzygy meaning pair of potentates, potential potents, embodies divine revelation, the unconcealing of hidden reality. That's what Aletheia is. Her purpose is the unconcealing of the hidden reality. Where nous structures the pleroma by thought, Aletheia illumines that structure with truth, rendering the archetypal ideas transparent and accessible to later eons, those beings who will follow, those syzygies that will come, will emanate from this highest triad, and ultimately to the human soul. Their union symbolizes the first stirrings of consciousness. Valentinus taught that this mind/truth synergy births the first ripple in the divine ocean. Next, then the square, the dual duad, tetractys or quaternary, two males, the logos, word, and anthropos, man. Two females, their syzygies, Zoe, life, and ecclesia, the church or assembly. So we have two pairs of syzygies, one male and the other female. The male syzygy is represented by the vertical sides of the square. The half of the male syzygy called logos is the active, formative principle of the divine mind. It is the speech by which the hidden Father's thought takes shape. By issuing the cosmic blueprint that orders all the subsequent eons. In Gnostic thought, this eon articulates the archetypal patterns that underlie every form, from galaxies down to human souls. So you begin to get a sense of what a genius Valentinus was. The anthropos half, the male syzygy, also called primordial man, represents the cosmic image or imprint of divinity, a living matrix in which the logoic blueprint is reflected as the potential for personal consciousness. It's this is the divine man. In Gnosticism, anthropos is the first mirror of the Father's fullness in anthropomorphic terms, the template that will later unfold into the human kingdom's soul and spirit. Together, this syzygy weaves form, logos, and image, anthropos, into the quaternary structure, thus stabilizing the pleroma's inner architecture, ensuring that divine thought, logos, has a living man-like reflection, anthropos, through which later eons, which are divine ideal beings, can manifest. And that's going to do it for today. We'll pick up next time and finish this chart before we get into the questions.